Welcome to Kevjet, the podcast, Tracie Blackmon, mental health and suicide prevention advocate. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're joining me from Alabama today.
Yes, deep in the South. So
Deep in the
if my
South.
my accent will slip a little bit here and there. So be prepared.
Not to worry at all. When I read your bio, I was taken in because the whole subject is something that everybody can relate to, but I think most people are afraid to speak about or unsure how to speak about. I think we'll just deep dive right into it because you say my mother's name was Judy. What would you want the world to know about the woman behind that name?
My mom was beautiful, so beautiful. She was kind, but in the same breath, she was a little bit of a spitfire. She worked really hard. She cared for people. Those are things that for many years I couldn't talk about just because the stigma around someone who passes that way. And I know, like you said, a lot of your friends will be able to relate to that. It's you don't know what to say. So I felt like it was finally time to say her name out loud. And I know that everybody has that person that they know that they want to say their name out loud. You know, she loved the sunshine, she loved Elvis, all the things that people growing up in that decade loved. And for so many years, I never got to ask those questions because I don't remember a whole lot about her and be able to just talk openly about her because she did show others so much love and kindness and always with a big smile. I think there's things that we miss from people. And, when we don't talk about them anymore, that kind of, their voice kind of dies with them. And that's terrible.
It is terrible. Do you remember what life was like, what your relationship was like growing up? Because you were 6 years old when this happened, weren't you?
Yes, yes, of course. So I was the baby. So I do remember that. I do remember being spoiled. I remember sitting in her lap in the rocking chair and her reading me the little golden books that you used to get at the grocery store. That was a big thing that we did. I was always under her feet when she was in the kitchen cooking. She would be peeling potatoes and she would sneak me a little bite and she would have a little bite and she would just keep peeling the potatoes. And she made macaroni and cheese almost every night because her little one that was all I would eat back then, kind of thing. She was very kind, and I know that she loved her children very much, her babies. And it's just sad when that kind of thing goes away. And I remember she was a really hard worker because I remember feeling her toes, and I talk about this in the book. Her pinky toe always had this like really sharp callus on it, and it was because she stood up on the concrete floors in the cotton mill and doing the things that she did to provide for her family, and her feet were already like that, and she was just barely 30. So
At 6 years old, how was her death explained to you? And what were you left to figure out on your own?
it's not funny, but I chuckle because it was not really explained to me at all. I was there, it happened, I caught a glimpse, unfortunately, and that was really it. And that's when the silence kind of took over. Nobody ever explained it to me. It was 1982. People didn't even speak about mental health in 1982. I do believe, because I started school right after that, I do believe one of the teachers had suggested to my father about counseling or something like that. But in the 80s, him being a very traditional Southern man, that's just, no, my kids don't need that kind of thing. And so it was really never talked about, never explained to me. What was with me just stuck with me that day, and that's how I was left to interpret things. And as a 6-year-old, it was very confusing and scary. You felt like it was almost like, and I've said this a time or two in some of my talks, that it kind of feels like a bomb went off in our house. Like people were there, but nobody really knew what to do and nobody knew what to say. And it was just this thing that it just continues to grow because it not only affects us that were there that day, but the community as well, her friends, our extended family. It really goes on to affect hundreds of other people that you don't even really think about in that time.
You talked about your community as having one caution light and 7 churches.
Yes, still today, still that way today.
And so, did you feel embraced by the community or did you feel shunned? How did you feel, especially at that young age?
Well, that's an interesting the way you asked it, because the premise of my book is that the whole damn town went silent. And it wasn't their lack of empathy. I think they just didn't know what to say. I wouldn't say I felt taken care of, for sure. However, I do feel like there were times in school that that they maybe took pity on me or made me the teacher's pet because whatever reason, things like that. And again, those are some times that I talk about in the book, as well as you never really knew if that was pity that you were getting, which as a child made me angry, or if it was just a sincere, I care about you gesture.
For 30 years, almost nobody said her name. What did that communicate to you?
That she almost didn't exist. She was here, she gave birth to me, my brother, and my sister, and that was it. And in a way, I say that, but I could always feel my dad's love for her specifically. But other than that, it was really like, let's put this in a drawer and just not talk about it because it's just too hard to talk about.
What was the defining moment that you said, we have to say her name, we have to tell her story, this is important?
That moment happened just not too long ago, actually. But the defining moment where I was like, wait a minute, this is something that we're doing now. We are talking about suicide. The word happened when I started going to the Out of the Darkness walks, which is put on by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And that store, I was just going to work one day. I was 30, I believe, headed to work one day, and I saw the word suicide on a sign. And I literally stopped in the middle of the busy road, whipped my car around, and went back to read the sign, and then went home to see what it was. I was just so blown away by seeing that word in print. And I'm a grown woman now with children of my own and things like that. So it really kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, oh my gosh, we can talk about this now. Is this something we can talk about now? Because I've been holding my breath for 20 something years. Is this something we could talk about now? And so when I went to that first walk, it changed my life tremendously. And I don't think that I was able to even begin to heal until I started really getting involved with that.
What do you think it cost you in your life growing up all these years and not being able to talk about it? Do you feel cheated? Or
Oh,
do you,
absolutely.
and we can turn that around and also say, do you feel stronger as well?
Yeah, and like you said, it uh, it really brought about a lot of anger for sure. That I didn't even know what I was angry at most of the time. But it did. It brought about a lot of anger, a lot of self-destruction, that kind of stuff growing up. Because how do you, if you can't talk about it and remember and honor her in the way that she should have been, how does that come out? So it cost me basically my childhood. Made a lot of stupid mistakes growing up. And then, I probably never cried so hard for her as in my entire life as the night my daughter was born. I'd had a lot of accomplishments, graduations, birthdays, things like that. But that moment, yeah, I really felt cheated and robbed because even at that moment, we weren't saying her name. We weren't even having the discussion about suicide yet. We weren't doing any of that. So that was probably a break for sure. And I, this cloud of depression that has followed me around my entire life, and mostly out of the things that happened because of that, for sure, for sure.
How do you think the silence taught you how to grieve?
It did not. The silence taught me not to grieve, and that was the problem. That was the problem. I never really felt like I could grieve her. I mean, of course, there were times where I would think about her and be sad and cry and that kind of thing, but the silence basically taught me that put that in a drawer, put that away. We're not going to talk about that, and so I didn't talk about her for, 30 years until I started going to these walks in a place where I could mention her, put her picture up, walk in her honor, things like that. So I didn't grieve. And maybe that's why it took me this long, Kev, for me to write this book, with her name and her picture, because it wasn't until recently till I was finally able to sit down, think about it, grieve properly for something that happened to me 40 something years ago in the proper way.
Have you ever sat down with your siblings or any other family members and just had a discussion within those 30 years?
There have been times on and off, not with my brother, and he's passed away now, but my sister and I've talked about it a couple of times. Again, she gets really angry because she was older, and she gets really angry. So it's hard for her to talk about. And my sweet dad, bless his heart, he would always say, I don't know why your mom did what she did. And he passed away in 2023. So that put me in a really dark spot for a long time. But I think coming out of that, like I said, the last couple of years, finally I was able to grieve him and her and just really come out of the fog that I was in myself. And then, so every year now almost, we've been trying to get together, my mom's side of the family, just as we call it our girls' trip, but it's just some cousins, my aunts, my sister, me, my daughter will go sometimes, and we'll either go on a trip or we'll go to somebody's house and play games. And we started doing that, I think, in 2016. And I really wanted to jump in on that because these are the people that's left that have these stories of my mom. I only have little snippets of memories. I don't have the whole full on stories of things. And these people did. And the sad part is, Kev, because I just lost my uncle, which was her only brother this week, and one of her sisters about a month or two ago, is that these people they're dying now.
Yeah.
And they are the ones who hold the memories of her best of all because they were her siblings.
Did they know that you were writing this book?
They don't know yet. They will know Saturday. Yeah, so it's been good to collect some stories from them and things like that. And I will say, my aunt Marcia, bless her heart, she is definitely one of the ones who has never shied away from talking about my mother or speaking about my mother and telling the funny stories, or if I have a question about something, she always answers it, and she's always been, so she's my blessing. But she's all I have left now. So I felt like this was the time. I have to get all these stories because, these are the things that I have left of her, and I need these pieces.
What do you wish somebody had told you as a 6-year-old as a piece of advice to get through the first few days at that time? Do you think something would have made it better? Were there words that could have made it better?
Well, I don't know if it would have made it better, but I think if someone had just told me it's all going to be okay, it's going to be tough, it's going to be hard, but you will get through it. Forgive me.
No, not at all.
There'll be days that you want to give up, but don't. Just things like that, because like I said, anything. There was no anything. No explanation, no, you know, this is what you should do. None of that. But I think if somebody would have just told me it's going to be okay, and maybe somebody did, but it wasn't enough for me to remember.
Sure. How do you think adults should approach that subject with children in a safe and meaningful way? And in a way
Well,
they understand as well.
I think that a lot of the talks that I do, I go to the fire academy in Birmingham, and I speak to police officers, sheriff's offices, things like that. Those are the first responders to the scene, typically. And I always tell them about me being the child that was there, and that I remember so much about the people who responded. And I remember things that they said and them just being there, because as a child, you think, oh, they're here, you know, they're coming to save the day. They couldn't save the day that day. So I always tell them to always be very mindful of children when they're on the scene, and to not say anything that would be super upsetting or triggering if they know that a child is within earshot. And I also encourage them, and I try to get the chief to encourage them as well, is if they do go to a scene like that, they go back and check on that family. Maybe a week later, maybe 2 weeks later, just stop by, take them maybe some information from AFSP, give them a couple of websites or the 988 number that they could call or text when they are upset. That would be the thing that I would say is most important. Luckily, I have not had to have that conversation with a very, very young person. But I will say that I've taught some classes that I learned from AFSP and to teenagers, groups of teenagers. They had a campaign called Seize the Awkward. It's an awkward conversation. Suicide is not a word anybody wants to say. I'm known as the suicide lady when I come do my talks at the sheriff's office.
Hmm?
It's not anything anybody wants to talk about, but God put me here to talk about it. And sometimes I'm loud and sometimes I'm abrasive and sometimes I'm aggressive. So I guess he thought maybe this is the one. She can be the one that can talk about the uncomfortable things that nobody really wants to talk about. And so I've kind of opened that up, and you have to have real conversations even with younger people, teenagers. Even have you thought about hurting yourself? Have you thought about harming yourself? Is this anything that you've thought about? Well, let's talk about it. And the main thing is that if I can give any advice to anybody, no matter what their age is, talk.
Do you think there's a common mistake from in 1982 that people are still doing now in 2026 when it comes to suicide?
Absolutely. Nobody wants to talk about it. Still, 1982, okay. But now there's absolutely no reason whatsoever that we're not talking about it. And you have to check on your friends. You have to check on your people. You have to check on your coworkers. I mean, and a lot of times people will get a sense that something's not right, but they're scared to say something. And you absolutely just have to come out and say, hey, have you thought about killing yourself? We need to, let's talk about this. Tell me what's going on. That is the one thing I know is that you keep people talking, you let them get it out. Decisions are made in seconds. So those matter.
You've mentioned that hyper independence was a response to trauma.
Yes.
When did you realize that it could be your strength?
I think that I've always been independent in a way. And my dad preached that because, as you can imagine, he was left raising 3 kids. So me being the youngest, he, raised me to be very independent, never depend on anybody. Daddy won't always be around. So you need to look out for yourself, that kind of thing. So if that wasn't hammered into my head enough, then,
Did you feel a bit of that before your mom passed?
I did. I was always very mature for my age or whatever, very, taking charge of every little situation kind of thing. But yeah, I think that I always thought of it as a strength until I realized that it was a trauma response. And I was like, oh, well, that makes even more sense. But at the same time, it has helped me so much through my life because I have been through so much. But at the same time, it has also harmed me in, like I told you, I had some self-destructive habits, that kind of thing, especially with relationships. You can't be the most independent person in the world in a relationship. You have to be vulnerable sometimes. So I think that over my lifespan, it has definitely cost me some better relationships probably that I should have been able to navigate and didn't. So I do still see it as a strength. But now at this point in my life, I can also see where it has definitely interrupted, my life and I made life harder for myself than it needed to be.
Do you feel that now that you're telling the story and you're sharing your mom's name, do you feel a sense of relief and a sense of healing?
Absolutely. I always say that when I started doing this and talking about suicide and presenting all the classes and things like that, is that I started out this journey for me. I wanted to know why she did what she did. I wanted to know more about suicide. So, being the person that I am, I went out and learned everything that I could possibly learn that anyone would be teaching me about the subject so that I could learn more and know. But what helped me in the long run and started letting me heal was the fact that when I started putting on those classes and teaching other people or talking to other people or talking to you here now and talking in front of groups and communities and schools and things like that is, helping others was not my selfish intent. I was looking for answers for myself, but at the end, doing these talks and helping other people is the therapy for me. Like I'm finally to a point where, I'm not on 3 different antidepressants or, whatever, having these depressive episodes where I can't get out of bed for a week at a time kind of thing. And it has a lot to do with the journey of how I got here is being able to talk about it. That was what made me heal.
What is the response to the first responders when you finish your time with them?
Well, most of them, of course, because like you said, we all know somebody. I could walk into a room and say, who here knows someone who has died by or attempted suicide? And almost every person in the room will raise their hand. So it's not like it's a uncommon, kind of thing. But when I'm talking to them and, they've seen everything. So there's not a whole lot that shocks them or scares them. But sometime in the midst of my story, sometimes the air will come all the way out of the room. And that's when I know that I've met somebody where they
Mhm.
are and in their grief. And they always are typically at the end very thankful to me. I always get a lot of thanks and thank you for telling your story. Thank you for saying it out loud, that kind of thing. And there's a part of my book I mentioned that a friend of mine that when he calls me to come talk, I always do. When my dad died, I was not in the best place. And he was like, Tracie, you don't have to do this. And I said, yeah, I do. Yes, I do. And when I after the talk that day, he walked up and gave me 3 poker chips, or the little chips, and on the back it said, "Yeah, I do." So I keep those. I keep those right by my mirror every day, and I look at those every day because that is the reminder that yeah, I do. I mean, it's still part of my healing journey, and will always will be. And I want other people to be able to do that before they're middle aged. Yeah.
Yeah. What changes when colleagues stop asking, "Are you okay?" and they begin asking questions that invite a more honest answer?
I've never had a single person that I've talked to decline to answer my question. Not a single time. And I've had phone calls in the middle of the night. As you can imagine, so doing for this for so long, I have people that send me Facebook messages. My daughter is this. Can you help me? Will you talk to her? Or, I give my cards out to the police officers and the firemen, and sometimes I get a call from them. What do I do? What do I
Sure.
say? Kind of thing. And I've never once had anyone decline to tell me what was in their heart because they, whether you know it or not, that person is hurting and they really need you to talk to them. They want someone to ask them what is wrong. I mean, there's so many people that go to bed every day, Kev, that nobody even asks them how their day went. It's sad, but it's an absolute. So, especially when it's your friends, your coworkers, your colleagues, you absolutely have to have those questions. You have to have those hard talks. And it's awkward. Yeah, it's awkward as hell sometimes, but I mean, if you're saving a life, if that person can just get off their chest what they're holding in and maybe see that, okay, yeah, that's not quite as horrendous as I thought it was, that's what saves lives.
If someone's listening right now and I just feel it, somebody's listening right now and thinking, "Well, what's a warning sign I should be looking for?"
And there's several. I mean, it depends on if you're depending on what age you're looking at, but they're all basically kind of the same, If someone is acting different, say for if it's a teenager, if they're used to sleeping all the time, but now they're hyperactive all the time. For an older person, maybe we like our sleep, but now suddenly they're hyperactive all the time. Something that's different in their behavior, an increase in drug or alcohol abuse. A big one, and this happened with my mom in 1982. Nobody knew, you know, giving away prized possessions. She gave me and my sister her jewelry box and her jewelry and things like that. That's also a big one. Like if your friend calls you and says, hey, if something happens to me, I want you to take my dog, Steven. Well, Steven is your life. Why are you trying to give me your dog? Like, what's going on here? Kind of thing. So it's there's definitely signs like that. Anything that's out of the ordinary for somebody that you just know that is not they're sleeping all the time and you're like, this is not okay. And a lot of times there are no blatant signs and we wish that there were. So it's kind of a double-edged thing. Sometimes there's signs and sometimes there's not. And that's just the thing about suicide that makes it so much different than just about anything else.
What are some important questions that we should ask that person?
Absolutely. Like I said, absolutely. Are you thinking about harming yourself? Have you thought about this? And nobody's going to not, I mean, nobody's never not answered me when I've asked that question. And you can straight up ask, have you thought about killing yourself? I mean, it's an important question and it seems awkward, but at the same time, it's not like what we thought maybe in the 80s and 90s, like it's going to catch. If we say it, we're going to put the idea in the head. No, that's not exactly how that works. And people are honest. And I think at the end of the day, after the awkward conversation, most people are glad that you asked.
And then if somebody responds and tells them or tells us that there's something going on in their life, what are the next steps that we should take?
Absolutely the next steps, things that you need to do if that is brought up. I've talked about the 988 number. Put that in your show. Everybody needs to know that. That's the mental health crisis line. So they can call that number. They can text that number any time of the day or night. They're going to get a mental health professional. There's not going to be cops to come beat down their door and handcuff them and take them to jail.
Is that
As
across?
you would
Is that all through America? That number?
all through America, yes, absolutely. So for sure, you get on your phone texting that if you think that you're talking to someone who may be suicidal, and then you want to remove the means. If there's pills or like police officers, firefighters, they have firearms, that kind of thing, and just have that honest conversation with you. I'm just going to take these for now, and it's going to be a fight sometimes, and you might have to call for backup, let me get your brother over here, or, things like that. But the main thing there is to keep talking to that person, get them to tell you what it is that's stressing them out. For example, people always want to say, they always go to, if it's a mom, well, you don't want to do that to your kids. Don't really say it like that. Let them tell you. And for all you know, they may not even like their kids. That may not be the thing, the thing that's going to really, it might be their cat, I mean, you never really know what's going to be the thing that pulls that person back to you. So you've got to just continue to let them talk. And if they stop talking, ask some questions, ask some more hard questions. Well, tell me more about that. What is going on at your job? Don't be judgy. Don't be, oh, well, you shouldn't worry about it. They're worried about it, obviously. Don't minimize their feelings, but keeping them talking long enough to kind of get them out of that frame of mind is the biggest thing that you can do.
And then once the crisis has passed, what's the best way to keep checking on that person without making them feel like you're constantly checking on that person?
Just be a friend. Do what you always do. Don't do anything weird or different. If y'all live by text, then a text is good. If you live by Friday evening phone call, don't forget that phone call. If it's someone you care about, and it is one of those things that I believe is a leading cause of death that is preventable. It's absolutely preventable. You want to make sure when you do follow up with them, well, have you talked to somebody? Let's see if we can find somebody that you can talk to. You got your 988. What does your doctor say? Let's do this. Just the leading questions that you would ask someone that you care about.
We talk about how even just saying the word suicide is something that everybody's a bit more comfortable talking about now. But you can use careless language when talking about this, can't we?
Yeah.
So, what are some things that we should absolutely avoid when we're approaching that subject?
Well, you've got two different things here, Kev. If you're right there with somebody in the moment, you have to be as raw and in the moment with that person as you can possibly be. So there probably isn't much that's off limits. Where is your firearm? Where, the really direct kind of questions. Now, as far as someone who is contemplating, or you think they may be contemplating, you try your best to, again, have those honest conversations without saying anything that's going to upset that person. And then for people like us every day that we're sitting here having this conversation, I don't want to say anything because I know that people are listening. So I don't want to say anything that's going to be a trigger to
Hmm.
someone. So typically we don't speak about a means by which people die by suicide. I also, you can hear when I talk, I don't say commit suicide. That really was something that used to bug me as I was younger. Another thing I had a chip on my shoulder about, this person's not committing a crime. They're typically in a mental health crisis when this happens. So,
I say that all the time. And in fact, here in the UK, they've abolished the word commit.
as they should,
Yeah.
as they should. So for sure, there's things that we don't want to bring up just in the everyday conversation, but that's just in keeping it a safe space for people who are listening and feel like that they can come forward, ask for help, talk to someone, text someone. We want them. We want them to. People, in the past have said, well, it's a cry for help. Yes, it is. It's a cry for help. Answer the call. So some of the language that was used prior is not necessarily things that we want to use today. And it's just small things like that. But again, we don't want to discourage anyone from talking for sure.
The title of the book is Her Name Was Judy. Was there even any other options for this title?
No. And I thought about it because I was like, when I first started, I really wasn't for sure. I was like, I just needed to get this out. I need to write this down. People need, this is the kind of book I wish I had had many, many years ago. So yeah, I was like, and not only that, but the picture I have of her where she looks like a movie star, and it was such a pivotal moment when I put her picture on that wall at the walk that day that I was like, and that's got to be the picture that goes on the cover. And that has to be it.
It's beautiful, actually. What was the most difficult truth that you had to put on on one of those pages?
There were several. There were several. Like I said, one of the things that came out of this was a huge anger. And I always had a temper growing up, and I just blamed that on my dad because he was Irish and he had a temper. So I blamed it on that for many years. But then I came to realize that it was an anger that was brought out from not being able to talk about her and say her name and things like that. And I would just snap on people for, no reason. And so having to admit that in the book, because I do talk about things that happened when I was younger and possibly being the bully at times and things like that. I don't want to admit that, but it's true. And I say that numerous times in the book. I'm not going to say anything that's not the true, whether it makes me look good or bad or ugly or whatever, because that is what this book is. It's about the truth as it should have been told years ago. And people like me who are suffering in silence need a comfortable place that they can go and feel like they're talking to a friend who understands what they're going through.
How has writing this memoir changed your relationship with your mother?
I will say, and I do still get teary-eyed at times, but I almost now at this point feel like I'm a grown woman and she is a grown woman. And I don't have to cry every time I mention her voice. I can smile and laugh because there's some funny things in the book about things that she did or said. And I just feel more comfortable now that it's like she's in the co-pilot seat, really, instead of pushed away in a drawer somewhere that, I can't see or talk about.
Tell me about Meridian.
Meridian came about because, as we said earlier, there are so many people that go to bed every night and not a single person asked them how their day was. I mean, loneliness breeds in depression, and then it's just all a downhill spiral from there. And something I realized when I was younger, and it was because everyone was always so busy, I was just like, everybody is walking around living their life and they don't even realize they're living it. They're not in it. They're going to work, they're getting the kids fed, they're cooking dinner, and they don't even realize, they don't even stop to realize the life that they're in. So Meridian is just that little check-in that says, how was your day? And then after you're able to tell it, for several days, this was good, this was bad, this happened today, thanks for asking, whatever you would want to say, it comes back and lets you know, hey, you may have thought you weren't productive this week, or you may have thought that you weren't even in it this week. But guess what? You did call your sister back. You did go check on your mom. So the things that you do every day that you completely forget about, it comes back to remind you that this is the life you lived and it's beautiful and it's great and you need to see that.
It's amazing. I love that because it's how you build technology around grief and mental health.
Yes. Yes.
And that's so modern.
Well, it's a very tricky thing because you definitely don't want it to give you something that you didn't do that day or whatever. It's very much all real, your life, everything that you put into it, and nothing that's ever made up.
No, it's all you.
Yes.
After more than 4 decades of carrying Judy's name forward, what does hope mean to you today? And what would you say to the person who's listening who believes that their story is too painful to speak out loud?
I would tell them it probably is not as painful as you're thinking it's going to be. It's always so much worse before you say it. You're always the hardest critic to yourself in your mind before you actually come out and speak your truth. But when you do, and you, from someone who has battled depression and all kind of horrible PTSD, all kind of horrible things, when I was finally able to get this out and say it out loud and put it down on paper and not be ashamed of it, not hide from it, that was the greatest feeling in the whole world. There's no therapy that can buy that. There's no pill that you can take to make that. There is no grief book I've ever read that can give you that. That is your grief journey, and you have to say it out loud. You have to say your loved one's name out
Amen to that. I
loud.
swear by that. I like to finish off my episodes with a little lighthearted, quick fire questions that are
Okay.
quite involved in the conversation we just had, but will leave us with a little bit of a happy heart.
Okay.
So if you're down for that, we'll do that.
I'm ready.
Alrighty. What's one thing that can instantly brighten your day?
My daughter's smile or my puppy dog.
Morning sunshine or sky full of stars?
Ooh, a sky full of sunshine.
What song always lifts your spirits?
What song's always? Well, Hey Jude by the Beatles. Every time.
Sweet tea, strong coffee, or something else entirely?
Something else entirely. And I'm from the South, but I'm not a sweet tea drinker.
What is your ultimate Southern comfort food?
Cornbread, beans, and greens.
What's one word that your closest friends would use to describe you?
Oh my. Loud.
Who makes you laugh until you can't breathe?
My daughter. Absolutely.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
Probably would be no matter where you go, always take your own car. When
That's
you're
very
ready to
good.
go, you can go.
That's really good advice.
Thanks, Dad.
What is something you're proud of that you probably don't celebrate enough?
Well, until I wrote this book, I would absolutely say for sure my work with AFSP. Because when I started actually putting it all together and compiling it, I was like, wow, I've done some really good stuff and I really am proud of it. And I'm glad now that I was able to finally to celebrate myself a little bit, a little pat on the back with that once you compile it all together and look at it.
If you could spend one perfect afternoon anywhere, where would it be?
The beach.
What's one thing your 6-year-old self would absolutely love about your life right now?
That I live on the lake and I have a boat.
Finish this sentence. I feel most like myself when.
I feel most like myself when I'm talking about things like this. It's very real, it's very raw, and that's when I feel like most like myself. And it's been a long time since I felt like myself.
Who's the first person you call when you need a heart to heart?
Was my dad for sure, and now it's my sister.
What is one beautiful quality of your mother that lives on in you?
I'm gonna say her fiery spirit because I definitely have that for sure. Like I can be calm and chill and sweet until I don't need to be calm and chill and sweet. And I think that for sure came from her.
What would you place inside an imaginary care package for someone going through a difficult time?
Definitely a copy of this book because I wish I'd had one like that. Definitely tell them about Meridian and 988 and a cup of soup and a glass of wine.
That sounds like a great care package to me. Your book comes out in September.
Yes.
And where can listeners find your book?
If they go to meetmeridian.co, there'll be a link there where they can purchase it. It's going to be on Amazon. So, of course, they can do the Kindle version for like $4.99 or whatever. So that's going to be exciting. I chose to bring it out in September because that is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. And so it just really kind of worked out that way. And I feel like that's pretty fit.
And her name was Judy.
Her name was Judy.
Love it. I loved our conversation, and I know it's going to help a lot of people out there. It's going to help their heart smile because they've all gone through some really difficult times. And if they are going through a difficult time, they're going to look you up.
Absolutely. I'm here.
Thank you very, very much for this conversation.
Thanks, Kev. I appreciate it.